Georgia offensive tackle Broderick Jones will leave the NFL Combine as OT1, and we're going to tell you why.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the NFL Locked On Draft podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your co-host, the man on the ones and twos, Damian Parson. You can find me on Twitter at DP_NFL, national scout with the Draft Network, and your local and favorite running back guru. And as always, I got the champ with me.
What's up, guys? What's up, everyone, man? This is Keith Sanchez, senior draft analyst at the Draft Network. And like my guy DP always introduces, man, 2019 national champion, LSU Tigers, man, greatest team ever assembled on a college football gridiron, man. Here to bring you some championship level conversations. And today we're going to talk about offensive tackles, man. Who's going to be O-Tackle 1, first round possibilities. And then also we're going to get into the deep dive of offensive tackles and those interior offensive linemen to see who we can kind of point out to find some good value overall. But DP, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
In the cold open, Keith, I talked about Broderick Jones being OT1, right? And he's OT1 for me, at least, heading into Indy. But Keith, coming out of Indy, I believe he is going to be offensive tackle 1. It won't be Peter Skoronski. It won't be Paris Johnson, right? It won't be any of these other guys. It won't be DeJuan Jones. It won't be Anton here. It's going to be Broderick Jones, Keith. I think this is the guy that teams will have penciled in after we leave the Combine, because we'll be there next week. After we leave the Combine next week, he will be the guy. I want to get your thoughts on him as potentially being offensive tackle 1.
I agree. And I'm going to be honest. I think to this point, I think he's underrated, man. I don't know why people aren't speaking about him, right? There seems to be more hype around a couple of the other offensive tackles, which, you know, they're pretty good football players. But, man, when you watch Broderick Jones on film, you see the size, you see the power, you see the movement skills, you see the range that he has. Man, he reminds me of Iconoa from last year, right? I'm trying to get that right, man. Yeah. I'm trying to get that right, man. He reminds me of him, though. I think they're probably very similar as far as measurables, but the one thing that stands out to me is the range that they play with, right? And I think that's very important for offensive linemen, and the way that NFL offenses are going now with, you know, obviously being spread, but also doing these different variance plays, right? They're doing different things. I think it's important to have an offensive lineman that can play in space, that can change directions. If you want to do some of those, you know, unique things, different type of screens, tunnel screens, you need offensive linemen that can get off of their traditional spot and then get down the field 20, 30 yards and place a effective block. So for me, I think Broderick Jones is OT1. And I think up until this point, man, he's been underrated as an offensive tackle prospect.
Keith, I love that you invoked the name Ike Ekwonu because they are similar in size. And Ike has him about 20 pounds in terms of, because Ike was like, he's played at 320 and Broderick's more on the 300 even. He's a lot more leaner, but same height. I think the length is very similar, and the play styles too, Keith, because what do we love about Ike? He was Mr. Pancake. He was the guy that would throw guys out of the club, throw them into the dirt, finish guys off, and Broderick Jones does the same thing, man. And you talked about the diverse run schemes. They run different things under Todd Monken, who's now with the Baltimore Ravens. He was the OC at Georgia. They ran pinning and pulling and power and zone, right? They ran all those different things, toss sweeps. And I remember, I think it was Kenny McIntosh talked about how Broderick Jones at one point in practice hit 19 miles per hour on the GPS.
This is a tackle, man. That is a big man move.
300 pounds, keep 19 miles. Think about being the DB on the island out there. You just chilling, thinking this, you know, they done reduce the split of the wide receiver, so you stand outside, and next thing you know, it's a tall sweep, and you got that big fella barreling down at full speed ahead. This Mack truck coming your way, ready to knock you off the freeway, man. And Broderick Jones, like I said, I really like the Ike Ekwonu thing. But Keith, I want to talk about it, right? Because everybody else is gonna, when they hear the OTs, let's talk about the tier 1 guys. We talked about Broderick so far. Peter Skoronski, Keith, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? What is he?
I think he's just safe, right? Like that's what you go. He's safe,
Perfect.
right? I don't know if he's a guard or if he's a tackle. He's just safe. Like, you know what? This is a pretty good football player. Maybe he'll never reach Hall of Fame level, right? As far as a football player, but you can see this guy sprinkling in a couple Pro Bowls, and you know that he'll do his job. So you can pencil him in as a solid starter. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, right? Everybody wants necessarily elite measurables, right? But some people, we always use basketball references, but using baseball references, right? Derek Jeter wasn't a home run hitter, but he consistently got you singles and doubles, right? And you knew that that's what you was going to get out of Derek Jeter. And I'm not saying Peter Skoronski is on that type of level in the comparisons, but there's a spot for those guys, right? There's a spot for a guy that can show up every single day, and you know exactly what you're going to get. Now, if he plays guard or tackle, I think he can play both, man. I think depending on how your team is currently structured, Peter Skoronski can do both, man. So I think stop overrating and saying, hey, he doesn't have the elite measurables. The guy is just a good football player. And so allow him to be a good football player. Draft him if you need an interior offensive lineman or if you need a tackle, and know that you have a starter and somebody that's going to contribute immediately.
No, 100%. The measurables is going to be big for him, Keith. But we've seen guys with shorter arms succeed in this league to an extent, right?
Yeah.
His old teammate, Rashawn Slater. Now, Rashawn I think, has better power and movement skills. He's a better athlete, but he didn't have the ideal arm length. Isaiah Wynn, who was, if I remember correctly, was at Georgia, got drafted to the Patriots, and Bill Belichick tried him at tackle. Now, that's my philosophy, Keith. Try him at tackle and see if they fail.
And
if they fail, you kick them down. There's no harm, no foul, right? I remember years ago, it was, not recent, but just a couple years ago, Forrest Lamp, I think it was Western Kentucky. He was a tackle who had short arms, good movement skills, powerful guy. I remember his claim to fame was how well he played against Alabama early in that season, man. And then when he got to the league, he got kicked it inside and he just battled injuries. He never got that footing, Keith. So I like, just that discussion about Peter Skoronski, because at the end of the day, like you said, just give him a shot. Whatever it is, he's safe, and you're going to feel good about him.
And the thing is this, if you're the New York Jets, right, you need multiple offensive linemen, right? So you need a lot of them. So who really gives a damn if he's an offensive tackle or if he's a guard? You need both of them.
Get your best five on the field, baby.
Get your best five on the field, man. So I think that if you're the New York Jets, a team like that, draft Peter Skoronski. Don't really care if he plays tackle or guard, because you need both of them anyway. And guess what? We've seen some pretty bad offensive line play. So there's plenty of teams out there, not just to pick on Jets, right? There are plenty of teams out there. The Oakland Raiders, right? I mean, the Las Vegas Raiders. You need plenty of offensive linemen. So I definitely think you draft this guy and you just roll with him, whether he plays tackle or guard.
Keith, and I know that you have some history, from recruiting and working at LSU. Paris Johnson Jr., man, talk to us a little bit. Tell the people, tell the family, the listeners about Paris Johnson.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're talking about a high caliber athlete, right? And then you're talking about versatility. It's the guy that played he played right guard, he played right tackle, and now he's playing left tackle at Ohio State. And you see the athletic traits, right? This guy is a high caliber athlete. And then you also know that he's a very smart. You're talking about a guy that off the field knocks everything out the park. So he lends me to think that this is a textbook tackle. And this is a guy that when you draft him, you know he's going to be your left tackle for the next 10 years. So, man, you draft him being very comfortable with the on the field traits and then also the off the field traits, which I think is going to help balance it out and is going to keep his draft stock as a top 10 football player.
No, I love that. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm looking forward to seeing, because some of this stuff, it matters, then it don't matter, but it's just good to see. It's his bench press, because we know that he played guard, his first full year as a starter in 2021, right? He played right guard. And you just knew, like, okay, this is a tackle playing guard. They had Nicholas Petit-Frere, so they wanted to get him, let him get his moments and his reps, but still get their best five, like we just talked about with Skoronski. And I look at Paris Johnson. I'm like, all right, I just want to see him get functionally stronger in the upper body when he with that length and his athleticism and everything else. When he gets those punches off and he makes contact, I want to see more of a whiplash effect where you stun those edge rushers, right? And then not only that, but latch grip and be able to drive guys off the ball and continue to create running lanes, man. But I really like those guys are the tier one guys. I will ask you quickly, give me yes or no, Keith. I'm gonna put you on the spot. Is DeJuan Jones part of that tier one, or is he tier two?
I think he's tier 2, man. I think he's tier 2. He's a tier 2 tackle. We like him, right? And so I think he's a good football player, but I think he's tier 2. But DP, you know what we still have tier 1 left of? These interior offensive linemen, man. We didn't get into them, man. I want to tell our listeners, make sure, man, hit the like button right now, subscribe, comment, let us know how you feel right now. And coming up next, we're going to get into these tier 1 interior offensive linemen because that's a very important position.
This episode has been brought to you by Built Bar. Guys, let me tell you something. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Why does it taste like a candy bar, DP? Because it's made from 100% real chocolate. And I can tell you personally, for someone that goes to the gym, sometimes you don't know what to eat, but you need your protein, but you don't want fat and calories and all that other stuff. You can grab a nice quick bar of Built Bar. I just bought some from Walmart, local Walmart, went right to the pharmacy section. It was the cookies and cream flavor. A1. I was able to grab them. They only came in, 4-bar box, but you can go to your local Sam's Club and get the 13-bar box if you fancy and you want to buy in bulk and all that. You one of those people. You know what I'm saying? No disrespect, no hate, but you could do either or you could just order it online by simply going over to builtbar.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDON15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. Keith, you talk about those interior offensive linemen, man, the tier 1 guys, right? Keith, the name that always pops up, baby. The name that always pops up is my man out of Minnesota, John Michael Schmitz. First of all, Keith, the name sounds like an interior offensive lineman. It sounds perfect for a center or guard, Keith.
Yeah, oh man. And then we had the pleasure, me and Ray G, we had the pleasure of interviewing this guy, man. We're down at the Senior Bowl, and man, another very smart guy, man. You trust him to be the center, to kind of be that, that guy that makes everything go, right? Like if it's not the quarterback, you trust him to call the protections. And one thing of note, man, we're talking about being at the Senior Bowl, right? So all of these guys are relatively unfamiliar with each other, right? Everybody's pretty much strangers. There's a whole new coaching staff, XYZ. And this guy emerged, man, by the middle of day 2 practice for him as the leader. Like he was the guy, hey, come on, let's get lined up, man. All right, hey, we stepping with this foot. Hey, man, come on, get your extra rep in, XYZ. And I found that to be it was intriguing, but I liked it a lot, right? Like, to use a simple term, I just liked it. I'm like, man, a leader at the center position. I'm like, that's how it's supposed to be, right? When you think about guys like Jason Kelsey, right? And then just the pure love for the football game, man, and how that translates to the rest of the offensive line, right? Because he's the center, he's the hub, he's the first person to touch the football every single play.
Offensive line.
Thank you. So he has to love it, right? He has to love the game, and it has to be infectious throughout the rest of the offensive line and the offensive unit, period. So, man, John Michael Smith, I'm high on this guy. I think when we talk about a tier 1, I'm not even say tier 1, I'm even going to say a round 1 caliber football player. I like John Michael Smith.
I like him a lot too, kid. You just talking about a guy that to me is like that phrase hard hat, lunch pail type of guy that just goes to work and puts in not just the 40 hours, he's putting in the 60 and the 80, working in the factory, man. He's just a hard working guy. And like you said, the leadership and everything he brings to the table, man. I enjoy watching this tape, but I enjoy watching him down in Mobile as well. Getting especially with centers in today's game, a lot of these guys come in undersized. He was a well-built dude when I saw him.
Listen, he eats. Minnesota, he's not missing any meals.
No meals missed.
He's heavy or is bad.
No.
But he has good size. He's not one of those interior offensive linemen / centers where you're gonna see where he's gonna be continually collapsed in the pocket. That's not him, man. He's gonna be able to anchor well and set a good foundation, to keep the defensive lineman from penetrating.
You talked about anchoring well and stopping momentum, and one guy who did that a lot in Mobile was one of your guys, and actually I sat down and played Madden with him, and he luckily beat me because I got really aggressive in the fourth quarter when I shouldn't have. That was a trend down in Mobile.
DP, we got to keep it real. You blew it, man. You blew it. At the end of the day, you blew it.
I pulled. I was too aggressive, Keith. And I was too aggressive, man.
You pulled the Brandon Staley out there. Pulled the Brandon Staley. You thought you was coaching.
I should have just kicked the field goal and took the points, but I went for them first, and it didn't work out. Osiris Torrance, Florida, interior offensive lineman, right guard, man, and guy who was one of the linchpins for that offensive line in front of one of our favorite quarterbacks in this draft, Anthony Richardson. And you're talking about a guy that's physical, big, strong, aggressive, very mild mannered, and just cool, just cool under pressure. Just a great person, man. Just kind of sitting and chilling with him for about an hour or so, man. Just talking with him, talking to him about A-Rich and everything. But watching him down in Mobile, and I think he talked about just kind of dropping some weight, Keith, so to help his movement skills, so that he moved properly the way that he knew he could.
Yeah, okay, so can we pause right there then, right?
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, how do you feel about that? Because on film, I'm going to be honest, right, and talk to our listeners, I was not that high on Osiris Torrance because I did think he played heavy, and it was obvious, right? Like we just talked about John Michael Schmitz and not bad weight. I think this guy had bad weight on him. Then seeing him in person, and I'm glad you had the conversation with him. He talked about he lost, like 20, 30-ish pounds to get ready for the Senior Bowl. So I want to ask you, DP, how do you feel about that, right? Like, do you think that's something sustainable, or do you think that's something that he's doing throughout the draft process? And it does that worry you a little bit?
It would have worried me if he didn't drop the weight, because it shows no self-awareness, right? Like no matter what, like you couldn't tell that you were heavier and that you didn't move well, but he could tell it. He understood it, right? We always use the term understanding the assignment, and Osiris did that. He knew, man, I didn't move the way I was supposed to, in the way I know I can in the season. I was top heavy, what have you, and he dropped the weight and came down. Remember was it last year? I believe it was Ramondre Stevenson, not last year, but the year before last. Ramondre Stevenson, who played up in the 240s at Oklahoma, dropped down to about 228 for the Senior Bowl, and he kind of stayed in that realm. And you saw that the quickness and everything is like, okay, this is what we can get, right? It's all about the person, because we think back to, we've seen guys, right? You've seen the Eddie Lacy's of the world who struggled with the weight thing, right? Not being able to stay disciplined with their eating habits and whatnot, and keeping that hard work, keeping that weight off so that they can play a prolonged career and play at a high level. And I think with Osiris, him understanding, I need to drop some of this weight. I need to get lighter so I can move and play at the pace and the level that I know I can. I think he helped himself a whole lot down in Mobile, Keith, to the point where I believe the first round buzz that was coming into Mobile, I don't believe it was warranted based off, like you said, the film, right?
Yeah,
but
it was not warranted by film, no.
He looked much better, and I think he may have worked himself into that first round possibility.
Yeah, and for our listeners, I think that's something to just to be aware of, right? As he plays through his career, just kind of checking that weight and making sure that he remains at a good size so he can continue to perform like a tier 1 interior offensive lineman, man. But DP, we've wrapped up tier 1 offensive tackles, we've wrapped up tier 1 interior offensive linemen. But you know what we have to do, man? We have to give our listeners the deep dive. So we're coming up next, man. We're going to get into those day 2, day 3 offensive linemen, because that's where you make your money at when you're a general manager and you're a team. Those draft picks that when you draft later and they turn out to be home run hits. So we're going to give you the home run guys that we feel like will fall into that day 2, day 3 bucket.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app before, and I can't tell you how much fun you would have competing against your friends from all over the world. Right now, you get the opportunity with Ultimate Football GM. You are responsible for controlling your destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, all the ups and downs of a season. Simple as that. We created a Locked On League for you to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Can you be the ultimate Locked On Football GM? Choose Locked On League in the app to join. Can you create a football dynasty? I think you can. You should download the app. So, Locked On NFL Draft listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's all caps, Locked On, in the game store. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Keith, you talk about doing a deep dive. We love to do this, Keith, because everybody can talk about John Michael Schmitz, Broderick Jones, right? Yeah. We can talk about all those guys. They're the top, they're the creme de la creme. That's my new phrase when we talk about the top of the top. Creme de la creme. And I'm not even French. I think that's French. But we're going to get into a lot of these offensive linemen that people don't know that they should, Keith. And I want to kick it off, man. Joe Tippmann. Keith, I love this dude's game, bro. You talking about a center who's 6'6", over 300 pounds for Wisconsin. One thing we know about the Wisconsin Badgers, They're a physical football team
Physical
on
football
offense.
team. They may
Jonathan
not throw it, but
Taylor,
they can run it. They may
bro,
not throw
they
the
can never
football,
throw the
but
ball for whatever reason. They can't get a quarterback in there to save their life, but they can. They're always going to have offensive linemen and running backs on offense, Keith. You know what I'm saying? We've seen James White, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor with the Colts. You know, now they have Braylon Allen, former linebacker, right? But how are these guys so successful, Keith? Because their offensive line are usually built like country-fed grown men, and that's what Joe Tippmann is, man. And what I love about him the most, Keith, is with that size, 6'6", over 300 pounds, it's very rare you see a center snap and pull out in the game, right?
so
And get out in the
okay,
pull
I
game.
was going to ask you about that. What are his movement skills, right? Because it's not only very rare that you see a center snap and be able to pull like that, but it's rare that you see a 6'6" center, right? Like that
Yes.
doesn't happen because of leverage things. So how do you feel about how does he play with leverage, and how do you feel like that's going to translate to the NFL?
I think he does a good job playing with leverage. Yeah, of course, being 6'6", there are times naturally he's going to have high pad level, but I
Yeah.
feel like he did a good job trying, making sure to bend his knees, drop the anchor so he can get underneath the pads of his defense of his defensive opponent. And it's crazy because when you see them in the run game, to see him snap and get out with such quickness as a big body guy, I was really impressed by it, Keith. You know what I'm saying? Not just in the run game, but they snap and get out in the screen game as well. And he hunts guys down, especially on the second level. There's a couple reps, him talk about Broderick Jones earlier, but just seeing him against some of these corners just sitting out there trying to read the action, you know what I mean, being slow till they know. And by the time they knew, he was right up in their face, man, and putting them out into the dirt and and creating lanes, whether leading it up a hole or leading them to the outside. But strong-handed, like I said, one thing, just seeing him nimbly and being lateral agile, having that lateral agility to mirror and match guys as well in the pass protection game. I like that. So this is a guy that power rushers you may not have the best success against because he's strong himself and he knows how to anchor, sit, get himself ready. The main thing is, I'm not gonna lie to you, Keith. I think he has the versatility to play guard as well if a team needed him to. If you set at center, maybe you draft this big boy and put him at one of your guard
Yeah.
spots.
So I have a question. Do you think he has a skill set that he will eventually bump into that tier one type? Like, because I know you said you used the word love, DP. You said I love this guy. So does he have the skill set to possibly bump into that tier one to where he's a round two-ish type football player?
I think so, Keith. I think he has the skill set, the frame. He's an underclassman. I wish he was a senior so we could have seen him down in Mobile because it would have been great to see him out there, right? But I do think that he is skilled enough and talented enough with that physical makeup and profile to kind of push himself into that tier one where he is at worst a second round pick.
Okay. Well, look, I'm gonna take mine next. And man, you went with a 6'6" guy. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna one up your DP. I'm gonna go with a 6'7" guy, right? From Pac-12. And people who know me, I'm an SEC guy, but I gotta give the Pac-12 after dark some love right now, man. And I'm gonna go with interior offensive lineman from Washington, Henry Bain Balu. I hope I got that right, man. But I want to give him a shout out, man. This guy I thought he had really good feet, man. He has really good length. And I think he's also a prospect that can play guard. He showed that he can play guard. He started, I think, 13 games this past year at right guard for Washington. But I think he can play some right tackle also. So you talk about value with this guy, right? And he's 6'7", right? He's listed at 6'7". So at the very worst, he's 6'6". And that's still plenty enough length to play tackle. So, man, you draft this guy in the middle rounds, and just talking about a draft perspective, because there's so many names that we're going to rattle off also. But you're talking about trading back, and to me, that sweet spot for finding these offensive linemen where you're getting really good value is that third roundish range, right? Like if I have 2 to 3 third round picks, I can possibly walk away with 2 to 3 starters, right? Like real solid,
Yes, sir.
legit starters, and getting good value for my pick.
Keith, I want to jump to tackle, and you might know where I'm going with this. He's one of my guys, man. Warren McClendon, out of Georgia, man. The guy that we got Broderick Jones, but nobody talks about Warren, man. And sitting down with a former SEC defensive line coach who faced him, who also recruited and watched him come out of high school. The first thing he said was, "Man, he's a freak," and he was like, he's strong, he's got good length, he can move. And all of that is true, Keith. You know, he's not the polarizing name on that offensive line, but he's a steady Eddie guy. He gets the job done. He moves well. He gets guys, he gets out in the pulling game well. Also, another big guy. He looks bigger than he is because he has that old school neck roll.
Yeah, I'm not DP. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about it because it throws me off, right? Because you kind of think, is he top heavy or like what's going on? So we have to get him on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast and ask him to explain the
neck roll.
Yeah, because it's like 1980s ish, right? Like we're talking about throwback neck roll, but he wears it. Good football player, but I guess it kind of fits his personality because this is another mauler along that offensive line.
No, and he came down to Mobile, and he was actually about 10 pounds lighter than he played at. We played around 300, even similar to Broderick. They're the same height. I think both of their arms, like he's got really good, functional arm length as well. But I was worried at first when I heard I was like 290. I was like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like I'm hearing people, oh, he might have to kick inside. Not at all. He played at tackle the entire time he was there. Every rep he took that I remember seeing, it was at tackle. And yeah, was there some ups and downs? Yes, because he's still technically a little raw in terms of having that plan when guys are threatening his outside shoulder. Sometimes he throws a two-hand punch and gets double swiped and loses the edge. But then he has kind of that recovery, agility, and kind of an athleticism to still wash guys around the edge. And then when he gets his hands on, Keith, that's the key. Like when he gets his hands on with that length that he has, he can really stonewall guys and just really anchor, just get his feet set and really stop the momentum. So I think teams in that third round, maybe fourth round range, Keith, that you need a right tackle. You think about the Miami Dolphins, right? They have Teron Armstead at left tackle, but they don't have a bona fide right tackle. This young man has played right tackle his whole career, but Keith, he also played some left whenever they will pull Broderick Jones out of games.
Yeah, for sure. So, man, we're coming up on time, DP. But we only went through a couple guys. I want to give our listeners a couple more names real quick. So I'm going to rattle these names off, man. Alabama offensive tackle Tyler Steen is somebody to check out for me. Alabama interior offensive lineman Emil Ekiyor. This guy played guard, but he played center at the Senior Bowl. And then Syracuse offensive tackle Matthew Bergeron is another name to be on the lookout for, man, for this NFL scouting combine. And what we'll do is, because we weren't able to get to as many names that they have, man, because we can go on forever and ever about this, we'll drop some names in the comment section, man, and y'all make sure to interact with that.
For sure, man. Listen, as always, guys, we thank y'all so much for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today. It's Friday. The weekend is coming in. Like I said, we got the NFL Combine coming up. So listen, if you haven't already, if you're new to listening or watching on YouTube, smash the subscribe, smash the like, smash the bell, ding it, man, so that you can be alert and you can enjoy all the content that we have coming for you. And if it's audio version that is more of your forte and your taste, please find us on your favorite podcasting apps for the audio version of this show. Like, subscribe, download, share, all of it. Leave a 5-star review, guys. And as always, for Keith Sanchez, you can find him on Twitter at The Talent Code. And for me, I'm Damian Parson. You can find me DP_NFL. Come and join the conversation again starting on Monday. Y'all have a good weekend. This is the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.